There's a strange quiet surrounding your life lately, isn't there? A silence that doesn't make sense, a stillness that both comforts and unsettles you at the same time. It feels like everyone you once trusted, everyone who once filled your days with laughter or chaos, has slowly drifted away without explanation. You wake up and realize that so many familiar faces have faded into memory, and even though you tell yourself it's normal, something deep in your spirit whispers that this isn't ordinary, this is divine. You are not being ignored, you are being positioned. The isolation that's been pressing against your heart isn't a punishment, it's an alignment, a holy rearranging of everything around you so that what's meant for you can finally find you. God is not silent because he has nothing to say. He's silent because he's doing something too sacred to announce. You are in the middle of a rearrangement that only heaven can orchestrate. It's that strange pause between endings and beginnings, the gap between what you've lost and what's about to arrive. And even though your human heart aches for connection, your soul knows this stillness is necessary, because what's coming next must meet the healed, whole, awakened version of you, not the one still entangled in half-truths and broken promises. This moment, right here, is where heaven hides its most delicate work. You may not see it, but God is quietly aligning you with the one he made for you, the one who mirrors your soul's calling, the one who was molded through their own storms to complement your scars. You've wondered why it feels so lonely lately, why the connections that once felt magnetic suddenly lost their charge. The truth is, God is disconnecting you from what no longer matches your frequency. Your heart has outgrown temporary people, and your spirit has graduated from shallow bonds. You've entered the season where God is not just preparing you for love, he's preparing you for divine partnership, the kind that's built not on emotion, but on eternal purpose. This is why it hurts. This is why you feel misunderstood, even by people who claim to love you. They can't understand your silence, because your silence isn't emptiness, it's evolution. Every unanswered message, every person who walked away, every sudden ending is heaven's way of saying, you've reached a new level. You can't carry the old into the next. You are being refined in solitude so that when love enters your life, it doesn't have to heal you, it can grow with you. Many of you have been wondering why love seems to delay itself, why even the people who once felt divinely sent eventually revealed cracks that shattered your hope. But maybe it wasn't rejection, maybe it was redirection. Maybe God saw something you didn't, the version of you that would have settled for half love because you were afraid of being alone. And so, he took it away. Not because you didn't deserve love, but because he refused to let you settle for imitation love when divine love was still being shaped in silence. Think about it. Before God brings two souls together, he must separate them from everything that could distort that union. He isolates, not to punish, but to purify. Just like Joseph was separated from his brothers before stepping into his divine position, you are being hidden so your heart can heal away from distraction and noise. Isolation is insulation. He's keeping you safe from counterfeits that would drain your energy before the real thing arrives. You might look at others and see them in relationships, engagements, marriages, and wonder why you're still waiting, why your story feels delayed. But what you see as delay, heaven calls design. God is not late, he's deliberate. He's ensuring that when the one meant for you appears, you'll both be ready, both refined, both aligned. This love story won't be built on convenience. It will be built on calling. Every lonely night you've endured, every tear you've shed, every time you almost gave up on the idea of love, heaven has been weaving those moments into preparation. Because the one God made for you is not just someone you'll love, there's someone you'll build heaven with. But before that alignment happens, the old cycles must die. Every attachment born from loneliness instead of purpose must be broken. That's why so many of you are experiencing divine disconnection right now. People leaving without explanation, friendships dissolving, communication fading. It's not chaos, it's cleansing. The connections that once made sense no longer serve your destiny, and God will not let you drag dead weight into a living promise. You've prayed for loyalty, truth, and spiritual depth, but you cannot receive those gifts while still tied to those who thrive in shallow waters. So He cuts the cords, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, but always purposefully. You are not losing people, you're shedding layers. And with every layer that falls away, you get closer to recognizing the version of yourself that was buried under compromise. You're being purified, just like gold refined in fire. And yes, it burns. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But this pain is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to define you. Every heartbreak has carved space in you for deeper love, real love, divine love. You are being stripped of attachments that were never meant to carry the weight of your calling. The one God made for you cannot recognize you until you've become the version of yourself that mirrors His purpose. That's what this isolation is for. That's why it feels like you've been set apart. Because you have. You're being positioned, not punished. You're being hidden, not forgotten. The silence that surrounds you is the sound of divine construction. God is quietly moving mountains behind the scenes, aligning two hearts that have walked through fire in separate places, preparing them to meet where faith and timing finally collide. So breathe. Let the silence be sacred. Let the loneliness become your teacher. For in this season, heaven is not saying no. It's whispering, wait, I'm not done yet. And one day soon, when the alignment is complete, you'll look back at every unanswered prayer, every painful ending, and realize it was all making room for something so holy, so divine, that you would have never believed it if God had told you in advance. This is only the beginning of that realization. You are not being withheld from love. You are being prepared for a love that will feel like destiny remembering your name. You don't see it yet, but God is aligning you, thread by invisible thread, with the one who has been walking their own wilderness too, unaware that their path is slowly bending toward yours. You see, the longer you walk this path, the more you start to understand that before God aligns you with the one He made for you, He must first teach you what love is not. That's why you've met people who awakened something in you but couldn't stay. That's why you've fallen for souls that looked divine at first glance, but revealed emptiness beneath the surface. Those connections were classrooms. They were lessons dressed as relationships. God allowed you to taste almost love so that when real love arrives, your spirit would recognize the difference. Every heartbreak was a rehearsal for discernment. Every betrayal was an education in boundaries. Every disappointment was a reminder that you cannot build divine connection on human illusion. Before divine union comes divine detox, and that's what you're living through right now. This is the season where your heart learns to differentiate between soul ties and spiritual truth. Because sometimes what feels familiar isn't divine. It's trauma repeating itself in a prettier disguise. And God, in His mercy, refuses to let you repeat pain that He already freed you from. So He interrupts it. He pulls the plug. He ends it suddenly, without explanation. Because if He let it linger, your heart would settle for what was never meant to satisfy you. The pain you feel from that ending is not the punishment of God. It's the protection of God. You see, there are some connections so powerful in emotion, but so wrong in purpose, that they can imprison you if you're not careful. They mimic divine energy, but they drain divine strength. And you, chosen one, cannot afford to be bound by counterfeits. You are too anointed, too destined, too important to heaven's plan to be distracted by half-healed souls who only mirror your wounds. That's why God keeps removing people you thought were your forever. He's teaching you to release without resentment. He's teaching you to stop chasing what was only meant to awaken you. Every time you try to hold on, something inside of you feels restless, because your spirit knows what your heart doesn't want to accept. You can't carry Egypt into the promised land. You can't drag the old you, the old patterns, the old attachments into what's new. So he breaks the bond. It hurts, yes, but it's holy. It feels like loss, but it's alignment. Like Joseph, you are being prepared in hidden places. He was thrown into a pit before he ever stepped into a palace. You've been thrown into silence before stepping into divine connection. The loneliness you're feeling now is not absence, it's atmosphere shifting. It's God rearranging your surroundings so that only what's meant to grow with you can remain. The world calls it rejection, but heaven calls it selection. You are being selected for something specific, someone specific, and that someone is being shaped too. Right now, while you're questioning why nothing is moving, the other soul connected to your destiny is in their own transformation. They're being refined in their own fire. You are mirrors of each other, learning different lessons that will someday complement perfectly. That's why timing matters more than longing. If God brought them to you too soon, you'd love them through your wounds instead of through wisdom. If He let you meet before the preparation was complete, you'd mistake trauma for connection. So He waits. He orchestrates. He ensures that when your paths finally cross, you'll recognize each other not by sight, but by spirit. Because divine alignment doesn't happen through effort, it happens through resonance. It's two souls that have been trained by heaven to vibrate at the same frequency, finally meeting in perfect peace. That's what you're being shaped for now, the peace before the partnership. And to get there, you must let go of your timelines. God's clock doesn't run on human impatience. You may think you're waiting, but in truth, you're transforming. Every day you grow in silence is a day heaven gets closer to saying, now. So when you feel like nothing is happening, remember that everything is happening beneath the surface. The same way roots grow in the dark before a tree ever blooms, divine love grows in silence before it ever appears. You are in your root season, chosen one, the underground development of destiny. Don't despise it. This is where your character deepens, where your discernment sharpens, where your faith matures. Because divine love is not sustained by emotion, it's sustained by maturity. And that maturity can only come through time, through waiting, through trusting when you cannot see. Think of Ruth gleaning in the fields, unaware that destiny was watching her every move. She didn't chase Boaz. She stayed faithful to purpose, and destiny introduced itself when she least expected. The same will be true for you. You don't have to chase what's divinely assigned. You only need to align. God is orchestrating something so specific, so delicate, that even the smallest impatience could interfere with its timing. That's why He's teaching you surrender. That's why He's forcing you to slow down. You think you're stuck, but He's saying you're being synchronized. You're learning the rhythm of heaven, the ability to move only when grace moves, to act only when peace confirms. That's how divine love works. It flows, not forces. When it's real, it won't require you to beg, to chase, to prove your worth. It will come with ease because it will recognize your energy. The one made for you will not see you as an option. They'll see you as revelation. But to meet them, you must first see yourself that way. You must become the version of yourself that reflects the love you desire. That's why God isn't just aligning you with someone, He's aligning you with yourself. You are learning to love without losing yourself, to give without begging for return, to receive without fear of abandonment. You are becoming what you seek, and in doing so, you're sending a signal to heaven that you're ready. Every healed wound, every act of forgiveness, every day you choose peace over reaction, it all sends out a frequency that heaven responds to. It says, "This soul is ready for divine partnership." And when that signal reaches the one meant for you, their spirit will awaken too. They'll feel a nudge, a stirring, a divine pull without understanding why. That's the unseen choreography of God, aligning two stories that seem unrelated until they collide at the appointed time. You are both being prepared for that collision right now. And even though you can't see them, feel them, or know who they are, somewhere in the unseen, their name is already written beside yours. It's not just a love story, it's a destiny story, and every lonely day you endure, every tear you cry into your pillow, every whisper of "When, Lord?" echoes through heaven as the sound of alignment drawing closer. Because God is not ignoring you. He's perfecting the promise. You are in the waiting, yes, but even the waiting is sacred. Because waiting in divine timing is not delay, it's design. And as you wait, you begin to notice how this season isn't just about patience, it's about purification. It's about the subtle ways God starts touching parts of your heart you didn't even realize were wounded. He brings back memories you thought were buried, faces you thought you'd forgotten, conversations that still carry fragments of pain. It's not to hurt you again, it's to heal you completely. Because before divine love can arrive, the old residue of pain must be released. You can't carry the memory of betrayal into the heart of someone who's been sent to love you purely. So, God reopens the wound, not to bleed you, but to cleanse you. You may find yourself crying for no reason, feeling heavy for no visible cause, sensing emotional turbulence that doesn't make sense. And that's okay. That's the divine detox. That's your soul letting go of everything that once shaped your fear of love. He's not punishing you with loneliness. He's purging you from illusions. You're learning to separate love from attachment, connection from control, emotion from energy. It's a spiritual surgery, one that happens in silence and solitude. You start realizing how many times you mistook comfort for chemistry, or dependency for devotion. You see how easily your heart once settled for temporary validation because it didn't know its eternal value. But now, through stillness, through surrender, God is rewriting the script. You are remembering your worth. The same love that once made you feel desperate now becomes something you protect with discernment. You no longer chase it, you cultivate it within. You begin to love yourself the way you wanted others to love you, to speak life over yourself when no one else does, to sit in silence and feel at peace instead of anxious. That's the sign that your healing has begun, the day you can sit in your own company and feel complete. Because divine love doesn't complete brokenness, it complements wholeness. And as you reach that wholeness, heaven takes note. This is where the alignment deepens. It's as if God looks down and says, "Now my child understands the rhythm of real love." You start to notice your standards change, not from pride, but from peace. The things that used to attract you now feel heavy, and the people who once fascinated you now feel foreign. That's how you know your spirit has evolved. You're not difficult to love. You're just no longer available for shallow connections. You're learning that love isn't about who gives you butterflies. It's about who gives you peace. And when that realization finally settles in your spirit, you stop forcing what's not meant to stay. You stop begging people to understand your worth. You stop chasing closure from those who chose confusion. That's when freedom begins. The breaking of old cycles is the most painful, but it's also the most sacred part of this journey. You begin to realize that God has been teaching you discernment through heartbreak. You've been learning how to recognize when something is sent by heaven or born from hunger. There's a difference between being chosen by someone and being assigned to someone. Not everyone you love is meant to walk with you. Some people were meant to awaken you, to teach you strength, to help you confront your reflection. And though you grieve their absence, one day you'll thank God for their exit. Because had they stayed, you would have never evolved. You would have never discovered the strength that silence taught you. You would have never learned that loneliness is not the absence of love, it's the beginning of it. This stage of your journey is sacred. It's where you stop asking, "Why did they leave?" and start saying, "Thank you, God, that I learned." You stop looking for closure outside and find it within. Every tear becomes a teacher. Every loss becomes a lesson. You start to understand that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, it's a revelation of direction. God removes what can't grow with you so that what's meant to find you can. And while your heart aches, heaven smiles because it knows that you are one step closer to destiny alignment. You begin to walk lighter, freer, wiser. The desperation that once controlled your choices begins to fade. You start choosing peace even if it means being alone. That's the transformation God has been waiting for. The moment your love becomes rooted in divinity rather than dependency. And then something subtle begins to shift. You feel an inner calm you've never known before. You stop needing constant signs to believe that God is working. You start trusting without evidence. That's spiritual maturity, the ability to rest even when you can't see the result. Because faith isn't about forcing outcomes, it's about surrendering to alignment. This is when heaven begins to move faster. Every part of your journey starts to make sense. You look back at the people who hurt you and realize they were necessary. They forced you to evolve. You look back at the silence and see that it wasn't empty. It was sacred space for transformation. You see how everything you thought was working against you was actually working for you. The betrayals made you strong, the losses made you wise, and the waiting made you whole. And now, as your heart starts to beat with peace instead of panic, heaven whispers, "Now you're ready." Not ready for another emotional roller coaster, but ready for divine partnership, the kind of connection that mirrors God's intention. The one meant for you will not drain you. They will not confuse you. They will not make you question your worth. They will see you with the eyes of purpose, not possession. They will love you the way God designed love to feel, safe, calm, alive, and sacred. But before they appear, God will make sure you can recognize them. That's why He's been teaching you discernment. You won't need to guess or doubt or chase. When the real one comes, peace will be your confirmation. The connection will feel familiar, not because you've met before, but because your spirits have been aligned for a long time in the unseen. You've been walking parallel paths, healing in different places, learning the same lessons, guided by the same divine hand. And soon, when the time is right, those paths will cross. It won't be forced. It won't be dramatic. It will feel like heaven's timing exhaling. You'll realize that everything, every delay, every heartbreak, every lonely night was necessary to prepare you for that moment. But until then, God says, stay still, my child. Don't rush the masterpiece. Because what's coming isn't ordinary love. It's the kind of love that rewrites your idea of what divine timing really means. And as the silence deepens, a sacred orchestration begins to unfold behind the scenes. You don't see it yet, but heaven has already started rearranging the puzzle pieces of your destiny. You've entered a divine synchronization where every delay, every detour, and every disappointment begins to form the rhythm of a greater love story. You wake up one morning with a strange peace in your spirit, a kind of quiet knowing that something is shifting. though nothing around you looks different. That's how divine timing feels. It whispers before it manifests. It nudges before it reveals. God begins aligning circumstances in ways you can't measure with logic. Maybe He leads you to a place you weren't planning to visit, or a decision that seems small but alters your entire path. You start realizing that this journey was never about chasing love. It was about preparing you to recognize it when it appears. Divine love doesn't arrive in chaos. It arrives in alignment. And in that stillness, God begins to synchronize two hearts who have both walked through fire, both healed through solitude, both learned to trust divine silence. It's not an instant collision. It's a gradual convergence. They move through life unaware that the same hand has been guiding them both toward the same destination. While one prays for peace, the other learns patience. While one lets go of the past, the other finds courage to open again. Heaven waits until both souls vibrate at the same spiritual frequency, until their wounds no longer define them, but refine them. Because divine love is not born from need, it's born from wholeness. So, while you're here wondering when it will happen, heaven is aligning every detail with precision, the right time, the right place, the right version of you. That's what alignment truly means. It's not luck or coincidence, it's sacred mathematics. God's timing doesn't miss. It may feel late to your flesh, but it's right on time in your spirit. Every delay has been a teacher. Every waiting season has been an altar of refinement. You'll look back one day and realize that if it had come any sooner, you would have ruined it with your old wounds. You would have mistaken it for something familiar when God intended it to be something eternal. So He waits, shaping both of you separately until you are ready to hold the weight of each other's purpose. The one God made for you isn't being prepared to entertain you. They're being shaped to elevate you. They're not your distraction. They're your divine partnership, the kind that pushes you closer to heaven rather than pulling you deeper into the world. They are your mirror and your mission. And when the time is right, God doesn't just bring you together, He reveals each of you to the other. It's not through chance, it's through clarity. The moment you meet, something within your soul will recognize home. It won't feel like a spark. It'll feel like silence finally making sense. Their presence won't overwhelm you, it will ground you. You'll realize that this is what love is meant to feel like. Peaceful, present, pure. No chase, no confusion, no anxiety. Just divine stillness where two hearts beat in harmony with heaven's rhythm. And yet, even in that moment, there's humility. Because divine love is never loud. It's sacred. It doesn't announce itself to the world. It reveals itself in the secret space between two souls who have both known the cost of waiting. That's why God had to isolate you before He could align you. Because only solitude teaches you to recognize sincerity. You wouldn't have recognized your divine counterpart if you hadn't learned the language of silence. Only those who have been refined by solitude can see love through spiritual eyes. And when it happens, you'll realize how everything was, woven together perfectly. The nights you cried yourself to sleep, the prayers you thought went unanswered, the seasons where you felt forgotten. They were all part of the same story. God wasn't withholding love from you. He was rewriting your definition of it. You had to learn that real love doesn't rush, doesn't fade, doesn't demand. It simply is. It exists beyond human logic, sustained by divine purpose. And the person meant for you will understand that language too. They will have also walked through their own wilderness, faced their own delays, shed their own ego, surrendered their own timing. And when your paths finally cross, you won't need to explain why you are the way you are. They will already understand, because they've been walking the same spiritual corridor, guided by the same unseen light. They'll see your strength and not be intimidated by it. They'll sense your vulnerability and handle it with care. They'll hear your silence and still feel your presence. That's the kind of alignment only heaven can create. It's not built through effort, it's built through essence. And that's why God says, don't rush it. Because divine alignment is fragile. One step too early and the rhythm breaks. One move too impatient and the design distorts. But when you wait and trust, everything unfolds effortlessly. You won't have to fight for it. You won't have to convince anyone. You won't have to compromise your peace. When it's divine, it flows. It feels like water running exactly where it's meant to go. You'll know because it won't feel forced. You'll find that even in uncertainty, your spirit feels sure. That's what divine confirmation feels like. It's quiet confidence, not emotional chaos. It's as if heaven whispers, this one is different. And as your connection deepens, you'll begin to realize that love was never the goal. It was the gateway. The real purpose of divine partnership is to reflect God's nature on earth. Two souls, healed and whole, loving each other so deeply that heaven finds expression through them. That's why the wait had to be long. Because God isn't giving you a person. He's giving you purpose in the form of a person. Someone whose presence won't just make you feel loved, but will make you feel aligned. Someone who will awaken the part of your spirit that's been sleeping. Someone whose voice will remind you of God's tone. That's divine alignment. It's not about romance. It's about resonance. And once you experience it, you'll understand why nothing before it ever worked. Because this isn't just love, it's destiny remembering itself. And then, as the alignment begins to unfold in quiet, sacred rhythm, you start to sense it before you can see it. A divine stillness, like the air holding its breath before dawn. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but your soul recognizes it as the sound of something holy drawing near. You begin to notice small synchronicities that don't make sense to your logical mind, but speak deeply to your spirit. The same numbers repeating, songs that echo your prayers, messages that mirror your inner dialogue, encounters that seem random but carry divine fingerprints. It's as if heaven itself is weaving you toward the moment you've been unknowingly walking toward all along. And yet, even in this sacred anticipation, God whispers, "Be still," because the miracle of alignment isn't meant to be chased, it's meant to be revealed. The moment you stop trying to force the unfolding is the moment heaven accelerates it. Divine timing doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to surrender. So you let go again of timelines, expectations, and fantasies, and rest in trust. It's not passive waiting, it's active faith. You begin to understand that alignment isn't about waiting for the other person to arrive. It's about allowing God to finish His work in both of you before your worlds collide. You are both still in motion, learning, evolving, and healing in parallel. Somewhere, right now, the one God made for you is going through their own awakening. Maybe they're in a season of loneliness, questioning if anyone could ever truly understand their heart. Maybe they're learning how to pray again, rediscovering their purpose, or standing on the same edge of surrender that you once faced. The same God who walked you through your storms is walking beside them now. And when the time comes, your paths will meet in the middle of divine timing, not too soon, not too late, but right where heaven designed. You see, alignment isn't magic. It's obedience. It's two souls saying yes to the same divine call without even realizing they're answering it together. That's why your journey mattered so deeply. Because every time you chose faith over fear, every time you forgave instead of hardened, every time you healed instead of hid, You are aligning your frequency with heaven's. You are preparing your spirit to recognize love in its purest form, not by sight, but by spirit. And when it happens, it won't look like a fairy tale. It won't feel like fireworks or chaos. It will feel like peace, like breathing after being underwater for too long. You'll look into their eyes and sense familiarity, not because you've met before, but because your souls have been speaking across eternity. They will see you, not the mask, not the persona, but the divine essence underneath. You'll feel safe in their silence, understood in their presence. It will be a connection that doesn't drain you but restores you, one that doesn't demand you to shrink to fit, but invites you to expand into your divine self. And that's how you'll know, because real love will never compete with your purpose, it will complement it. The right one won't distract you from God, they'll remind you of Him, they'll call you higher, not just emotionally, but spiritually. They'll challenge you to grow, not because they're trying to fix you, but because they see the greatness God placed within you. You will begin to realize that love, in its divine design, is not about possession, it's about partnership. It's two people holding the same vision, walking the same direction, both surrendered to the same God. And yet, before this alignment becomes visible, there will be a final test, the test of patience. Because right before the miracle manifests, the illusion of delay intensifies. You may feel restless again, questioning if you misheard God, wondering if the signs were just coincidence. But this is not punishment, it's preparation. God always tests the soil before He plants something eternal. He wants to make sure your heart can sustain the weight of what's coming. So, He allows silence, not as rejection, but as refinement. This is where trust becomes your compass. You'll learn to move not by sight, but by peace. If it feels forced, it's not God. If it feels rushed, it's not divine. Alignment flows naturally, the same way rivers find the ocean without resistance. You'll begin to see how God was never late. He was precise. Every delay served a purpose. Every heartbreak redirected your heart toward its true design. Because divine love is not a reward for enduring pain. It's the fruit of transformation. You had to evolve to the level of what you were praying for. So when the moment finally arrives, when your eyes meet the one heaven handpicked for you, it won't feel like meeting a stranger. It will feel like remembering something you'd forgotten. Your spirit will recognize them instantly because it was crafted to. There will be no need to prove yourself, no need to perform, no fear of losing what was divinely sent. You'll simply know. The peace will speak louder than words. The way their presence stills your mind, the way your laughter feels like worship, the way your purpose feels sharper just standing near them, that's divine alignment manifesting into form. And in that sacred realization, you'll understand the mystery of God's delay. You'll see why He hid you, why He healed you, why He closed every door that would have led you away from this connection. Because had you met them before you were whole, you would have tried to complete each other out of brokenness. But now, you come together in wholeness, not as halves seeking validation, but as two flames merging to become one divine light. This is the kind of love that doesn't just fulfill you, it transforms you. It becomes a living testimony of what happens when two surrendered souls find each other under heaven's timing. You'll start to understand that this union isn't just about romance, it's about purpose. There's something God will do through your connection that He couldn't do through either of you alone. Your love will carry healing frequencies, not just for you, but for others who witness it. People will see the purity, the peace, the presence that radiates from you both, and know it's something beyond human comprehension. That's the signature of divine alignment. It doesn't glorify the couple, it glorifies God. Every conversation, every prayer, Every dream will feel anointed with purpose. It's as if heaven breathes through your connection. And still, there will be humility, because divine love isn't loud or boastful. It's sacred, private, intimate. It exists not for validation, but for vibration, to echo heaven's design on earth. So don't fear the waiting, honor it. Don't curse the delay, bless it. Because right now, God is quietly finishing his masterpiece. Every hidden detail, every unseen thread, every heart he's preparing, all converging toward the divine moment when everything aligns. The kind of love that doesn't come through striving, but through surrender. The kind that doesn't fade with time, but deepens with faith. The kind that reminds you that the author of your story knew exactly what he was doing all along. You were never behind, never forgotten, never unloved. You were simply being aligned. And soon, when you stand face to face with the one God made, for you, your soul will whisper, "Now I understand." Because every tear, every silence, every night you wondered why was leading you to this. The moment when divine timing finally meets divine love. And then, when you finally begin to walk beside the one God aligned for you, you realize it was never simply about finding a person. It was about encountering a mirror that reflects back the divine work God has done within you. At first, the connection feels almost unreal. The peace is so steady, the understanding so deep, that part of you hesitates to trust it. You've lived through too many illusions that called themselves love, but were merely lessons. Too many seasons where promises were empty echoes. Yet this is different. There's no striving, no chasing, no anxious wondering whether you're enough. You simply are. And that's the first miracle of divine alignment. It allows you to be your authentic self without fear. This person doesn't complete you. They complement you. They don't silence your individuality. They amplify your light. You find that their presence doesn't make you lose yourself, but instead calls forth the version of you that had been hidden beneath the layers of survival. You start to breathe easier. You speak more softly, not out of fear, but reverence. You begin to feel the nearness of God in ordinary moments, shared laughter, silent prayers, even quiet evenings when nothing spectacular happens, yet the air itself feels sacred. That's when you know this love is of divine origin. It transforms the ordinary into holy ground. But even in this alignment, God continues his refining work. Because divine love is not the ending of the journey, it's the beginning of a new mission. When God brings two chosen ones together, it's not for comfort, but for calling. The union becomes an altar where both souls continue their surrender together. The person God made for you will not let you stay small. They will speak truth in love, not to wound, but to awaken. There will be moments of friction, not as punishment, but as polishing. Two spirits sharpening one another like iron on iron. You'll see how love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's sanctifying. You'll face new tests, not of loneliness now, but of unity. Because alignment requires harmony, and harmony demands humility. You'll be asked to communicate through grace, to listen with the heart and not the ego, to forgive quickly and hold space for each other's humanity. The enemy will try to sow doubt, to whisper that it's too good to be real, that the silence means disconnection. But the truth is, divine connection deepens in silence. You don't need constant validation when the foundation is spiritual. You will learn that true love doesn't seek to possess, it seeks to serve. Each day, you'll be reminded that this union is not about ownership but stewardship. It's a trust given by heaven. You'll begin to pray differently together. Instead of asking for blessings, you'll start interceding for others. Instead of focusing on your needs, You'll align your will with God's, and in those moments, you'll feel heaven respond with power. Doors that were once closed will begin to open, not because of ambition, but because of alignment. You'll find that when two chosen ones walk in agreement, heaven cannot resist their unity. It's the same principle that moved mountains for Elijah, that opened prison doors for Paul and Silas, the power of agreement in God's will. You'll witness how miracles no longer feel miraculous, they feel natural, because when God is the center, everything flows in divine order. You'll sense that your relationship is not just for you, it's a beacon for others lost in counterfeit connections, a living testimony that divine timing, though slow, is sure. And yet, this season of fulfillment comes with new awareness. You begin to understand how sacred love carries responsibility, because everything of heaven attracts attention from darkness. The enemy doesn't attack what's casual, he attacks what's divine. So you'll need to guard your peace like a temple, to protect your unity like a covenant. You'll learn to pray over each other daily, to keep your hearts aligned even when the world around you shifts. Some days it will feel like warfare, but even then, you'll find that love anchored in God cannot be shaken. You'll remember all those nights of isolation, all the tears that fell unseen, and realize they built the roots of this strength. You'll finally see that God wasn't just preparing you to meet each other, He was preparing you to withstand together. Because divine unions are meant to advance heaven's agenda on earth, they are not fragile flames, but eternal fires. Through this partnership, you'll also begin to see yourself differently. You'll no longer identify by your pain or your past, but by your purpose. The one God aligned with you will remind you of who you are when you forget. Their words will echo the Father's love, their patience will mirror His mercy, and you'll do the same for them. You'll become living reflections of grace to one another, teaching each other how to love as heaven loves, without condition, without fear, without retreat. In this space, healing becomes a shared experience. You'll find that wounds once too deep to touch now dissolve in the safety of divine connection. That's what makes this union holy. It continues God's work of redemption through intimacy. Every embrace feels like restoration, every word like worship. You'll begin to see that love, in its truest form, is ministry. It's not built on attraction or compatibility, but on calling. Together, you'll find that your presence in each other's lives begins to awaken light in others. People will feel peace just being around you, not because of who you are, but because of who is within you. And in those moments, you'll finally comprehend the magnitude of what God was doing all along. You'll remember the waiting and smile, not with regret, but with reverence. You'll see how every heartbreak, every silence, every divine delay was a stroke of heaven's brush, painting a masterpiece beyond your imagination. You'll understand that had you met this person before your transformation, you might have mistaken their depth for danger, their stillness for disinterest. But now you recognize it all as divine design. The maturity that once came through pain now becomes wisdom that sustains love. You no longer fear losing what was given by grace, because what God joins, no man can separate. You'll begin to live in rhythm with heaven's heartbeat. Every decision, every conversation, every step will feel guided by divine presence. And yet, you'll stay humble, because the greatest gift of divine alignment is not pride, it's gratitude. Gratitude that you didn't settle when loneliness whispered. Gratitude that you trusted when everything looked uncertain. Gratitude that you waited when everyone told you to move on. Because now you see what waiting births: clarity, peace, and a love so pure it could only be heaven sent. You'll realize that God's love story for you was never about speed. It was about significance, Every divine delay was preparation for eternal impact. And as you walk hand in hand with the one God chose for you, you'll start to feel the ripple of your union in unseen realms. Angels rejoice, heaven smiles, and the atmosphere around you begins to shift. Together, you become a portal of light in a darkened world. And somewhere deep inside, your spirit whispers, "This is why. This is why you had to be alone. This is why you had to heal. This is why God was quiet." Because He wasn't just aligning you for love, He was aligning you for divine purpose disguised as love. And when that revelation finally comes, it doesn't arrive with thunder or spectacle. It descends like dawn, gentle and unstoppable, light spilling through the cracks of everything you once thought you understood. You wake one morning and realize that the silence that once tormented you was never absence, it was orchestration. Every unanswered prayer was not a rejection, but a redirection. Every delay was not denial, but design. And standing beside the one God aligned for you, it hits you with quiet clarity. This was never a love story written by human hands. This was heaven's architecture, love as prophecy fulfilled. The years of waiting suddenly make sense. The ache, the tears, the isolation. You see it now, how God had to strip away every counterfeit, every distraction, every idol that would have blurred your vision of what was truly sacred. Because divine love cannot be found through sight. It must be recognized through spirit. And when that realization finally blooms inside you, gratitude floods your heart in a way words can't hold. You see God not as the withholder, but as the protector, the master craftsman who built the foundation before revealing the masterpiece. You remember every night you thought you were forgotten, every moment you almost gave up, and you realize heaven was writing in invisible ink all along. You were not waiting for love. You were being molded into love itself. In that awakening, you begin to see how divine alignment is not only between two souls, but between heaven and earth. You recognize that love, in its purest form, was never meant to be contained. It's meant to reflect the nature of God. You and your counterpart are now living proof that love is not a fleeting emotion, but a force that transcends time, distance, and logic. You become co-creators in the divine story, channels through which heaven expresses itself. And with that understanding comes a new kind of humility, the realization that this connection was never about what you could gain, but about what you were entrusted to give. Love becomes a ministry, not a possession. Every act of kindness, every prayer you share, every silent moment of understanding becomes a ripple that touches lives beyond your own. You begin to see how your connection influences everything around you. The way you speak, the way you serve, the way you move through the world. People sense something different, something they can't name but can feel, and that's because divine love carries frequency. It shifts atmospheres simply by existing. But even in the beauty of this revelation, God reminds you that divine love still requires stewardship. It's not a finish line, it's an assignment. You'll face moments where life tests your alignment, where the world's noise tries to distort what heaven built in silence. There will be days when patience is tested, when vulnerability feels uncomfortable, when the temptation to retreat returns. But unlike before, you no longer face these moments alone. You now understand that divine love doesn't erase the storms. It gives you shelter within them. You hold each other through the waves, not because you are strong, but because grace sustains you. The love between you becomes a sanctuary, a place where both your humanity and divinity coexist. You begin to understand why God had to mature you before giving you this gift. Immature love would have run at the first sign of discomfort. Divine love endures, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. You realize that endurance is not about suffering, it's about stability. It's about knowing that even when emotions fluctuate, the covenant remains anchored in something eternal. And as you walk deeper into this revelation, something shifts inside you. You no longer crave validation, attention, or recognition. You no longer need to prove your worth or announce your blessings, because divine love teaches you the art of quiet fulfillment. You realize that the most sacred things in life are not displayed, they are protected. Your union becomes your secret garden with God at its center, a space not for performance, but for presence. And in that stillness, you hear God whisper again, "Now you understand why I had to take you through the silence." The waiting taught you discernment, the heartbreak taught you empathy, the loneliness taught you strength. And now, those lessons become the pillars that sustain your divine partnership. You see how love, when aligned with heaven, becomes a vessel of transformation. You start to heal things you never spoke of, simply by being in each other's presence. Old wounds lose their power. Old fears dissolve like morning mist. You realize that the greatest healing God ever gave you was another human being who reflected his heart back to you. Then comes the deeper revelation, the understanding that this love isn't just about the two of you, but about something cosmic. You begin to sense that the union between chosen ones serves as a prophetic mirror of God's relationship with humanity. The patience, the grace, the forgiveness, the commitment, it all reflects the way the Creator loves His creation. Every embrace becomes an echo of divine mercy. Every moment of reconciliation becomes a reflection of redemption itself. You realize that God uses love not just to comfort, but to teach. Through this connection, you learn the depth of what it means to be known and still loved, seen and still chosen. The same way God never gave up on you, you learn to never give up on each other. That is divine alignment in its purest form, a love so unbreakable that it becomes indistinguishable from faith itself. You finally see that love and faith were never separate. They were always the same current flowing from the same source. And as the magnitude of this realization unfolds, your heart softens with reverence. You begin to thank God not only for what He gave you, but for everything He withheld. You thank Him for the closed doors that protected your destiny, for the unanswered prayers that redirected your path, for the seasons of silence that taught you how to hear His voice. You begin to see that divine love was never something to be earned, it was something to be remembered. You were always loved this way. You just had to evolve enough to recognize it. And as you stand in that awareness, tears of gratitude fall, not from sorrow, but from awe. You finally see the grand pattern of your journey, how isolation birthed intimacy with God, how surrender birthed strength, how waiting birthed wisdom. You see how every fragment of your life, every shadow, every sunrise, was part of a single divine melody that has now resolved into harmony. In that moment of stillness, you realize the greatest truth of all. God didn't just align you with another person. He aligned you with His heart. The love story was never just between two humans. It was between Creator and creation. Every moment of your journey was God calling you closer, shaping you through longing, refining you through love. The person standing beside you now is not just your partner. They are a living reflection of the divine promise that love never fails, that timing is never wasted, that faith never returns void. You stand together, not as two who found each other, but as two who were found by God. And in that realization you finally exhale. The waiting is over, the silence has spoken, the purpose has been revealed. You have stepped into the very thing heaven wrote for you before time began. And now all that remains is gratitude, reverence, and the quiet understanding that divine love is both the destination and the path that led you there. And so, as the dust of your long spiritual journey settles and the divine orchestration finally reveals its masterpiece, a silence descends, not the kind born of emptiness, but the sacred kind that follows completion. It is the hush after a symphony, the quiet after the storm when you realize that everything you endured was leading you here, to this moment of holy stillness where heaven and earth seem to breathe together. You feel no rush now, no hunger to prove, no need to explain, what only the Spirit can comprehend. You simply exist in alignment with God, with your purpose, with the one He made for you. It feels like standing at the edge of eternity, your soul anchored in peace that transcends understanding. The chaos of the world still moves around you, but it no longer moves within you, because divine love, once received in its fullness, becomes an atmosphere. You live in it, you breathe it. You move as one who knows they are not just loved, but chosen. And in that awareness you see everything differently. The past no longer haunts you. The future no longer frightens you, because love has cast out all fear. You find that the greatest miracle was never the union itself, but the transformation it produced within you. What once broke you now built you. What once delayed you now defines you. You realize that divine alignment was never about perfect timing. It was about perfect formation. God was never preparing the gift for you. He was preparing you for the gift. You remember how impatient you once were, begging for answers, grasping for signs, longing for someone to understand you. But now you see how every delay was God's way of building endurance in your spirit. Every lonely night was a rehearsal in faith, every unanswered prayer a chapter in divine craftsmanship. The very silence that once felt cruel now feels sacred, because it was in that silence that you became who you were meant to be. The waiting didn't waste you, it woke you. It stripped away illusion, purified your intentions, and revealed the depth of your soul. Now you stand whole, not because life is perfect, but because your heart finally beats in rhythm with heaven's pulse. And as you and your divine counterpart walk forward in unity, you begin to notice how subtly heaven moves through your bond. It's in the way you understand each other without words, the way peace lingers when you're together, the way chaos retreats when you pray in agreement. You see that your love is not ordinary. It's a mantle, a ministry, a mirror of divine faithfulness. You no longer measure love by passion alone, but by purpose. You recognize that this connection is not meant to isolate you from the world, but to illuminate it. Together, you are called to radiate the same grace that was shown to you, to love people who feel unseen, to comfort those who still wait, to remind the weary that God's silence is not abandonment, but alignment. Your relationship becomes a living sermon, not spoken from pulpits, but written in the quiet acts of compassion, in the way you forgive, in the way you endure. People begin to notice that something different surrounds you, not fame, not fortune, but presence. The presence of God lingers where you go, because divine love has become your dwelling place. In time, you start to see that your story was never just about finding each other. It was about awakening the world to what love looks like when heaven authors it. Every moment of your life becomes a continuation of that message. You begin to serve without seeking recognition, to love without fear of loss, to give without expecting return. Because now, love is not what you do, it's who you've become. And when you look into the eyes of the one God aligned for you, you see more than affection. You see assignment. You see destiny reflected back, a sacred trust that demands reverence. You know that to love them rightly is to honor God Himself, because the same hand that molded their heart shaped yours to fit it. You both carry the same frequency of grace, and every time you choose patience over pride, mercy over judgment, understanding over anger, heaven rejoices. You realize that love, in its divine form, is worship. It is obedience to the Creator's design. Every embrace, every whispered prayer, every tear shed in forgiveness becomes incense rising to heaven. And though the world around you still trembles with chaos, you remain unmoved, because you've learned that divine alignment doesn't exempt you from storms. It roots you so deeply that storms can no longer uproot you. You have become unshakable, not because life is easy, but because your foundation is eternal. You see trials now as opportunities to reveal the strength of what God built in secret. You no longer curse the waiting or resent the pain that brought you here. Instead, you bless it, you honor it. Because without the breaking, you would never have known the beauty of restoration. Without the silence, you would never have recognized the sound of divine guidance. Without the wilderness, you would never have found the way home. You realize that home was never a place. It was this alignment, this peace, this love that mirrors the very heartbeat of heaven. As the sun sets on your old life and rises on the new, you understand that the journey of divine love never truly ends. It evolves. Every day brings a deeper unfolding of what God intended from the beginning. You start to see the subtle ways He still leads you both, through dreams, through confirmations, through quiet nudges in the spirit. You've stopped asking for signs because now you are the sign. Your life is proof that God keeps His promises, that He restores what was once lost, that He fulfills what He begins. And in that realization, gratitude becomes your language. You thank Him in the mornings, not just for blessings, but for breath, not just for provision, but for presence. You thank Him for the mystery of timing, for the poetry of process, for the beauty of becoming. You thank Him because now you understand. Love is not the reward for faith. It is faith made visible. And when you reflect on the entire path, you feel a deep tenderness toward the person you once were, the one who doubted, who wrestled, who cried out in the dark. You wish you could tell that version of yourself, hold on. The silence is not punishment, it's preparation. The loneliness is not forever, it's forming you. The ache you feel now is the very proof that something divine is being born, because now you know God never forgot you. He was aligning you, sculpting you, sanctifying your desires until they mirrored His own. And when both you and the one He made for you were ready, when your heart spoke heaven's language, He brought you together in a way no human effort could have achieved. Not through chance, not through striving, but through divine orchestration that transcends space and time. So now, as you and your divine counterpart walk hand in hand into the next chapter, there's no more striving, no more searching. You have entered rest, not the rest of idleness, but the rest of assurance. You live knowing that everything that comes next will unfold according to divine sequence. You are no longer waiting for the next sign, because you are living inside the promise. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every shared breath between you carries the imprint of eternity. And in that sacred awareness, you whisper one final prayer, not asking, not pleading, but thanking. Thank you, Father, for the silence that spoke louder than words, for the waiting that became wisdom, for the love that became revelation. And in that moment, heaven answers, not in thunder but in peace, a still small voice saying, now you understand. You were never waiting for love. You were waiting for alignment. And now you are home.